Hi everyone, in today's video we're going to explore some of the views held by society with regards to social workers actually do. We are going to be looking at 5 of those views and consider if they are true or false. Firstly, we're going to start with social workers interfere in other people's lives. Is this true or false? The answer is false. Social workers actually respect the lives of children and their families. They pay close attention to the European Conventions of Human Rights, in particularly Article 8 of the Human Rights. To private and family life, we have a duty to do that. What actually happens is that social workers become involved in family life if either the family has requested for support or members of their family, neighbors, or other professionals have requested for those support. If someone is worried about the well-being of a child, they make a referral to us. Most of the time, we do end up building very, very good relationship with families and the children, and in our involvement, empowering those families really. Secondly, only social workers that have children should advise families on how to raise them. False, because social workers actually undertake rigorous training in their role to be able to work with children, families, and other adults. So they don't necessarily have to have children to be able to give out advice, issue referrals to appropriate agencies, because these are part of the training that they have undergone. They have to understand around child development, they have to understand how children and family work, they have to understand relationships within families, they have to understand the communication skills that goes within with humans, they have to understand sociological aspects of human functioning, they have to understand so much. By the time they come out, they are fully equipped to provide those advice, like you would have your nurses, your doctors, your psychologists, your therapists. The third one is a social worker is not allowed to talk to my child without my consent, and they did this, it is against the law. Ideally, we will always seek to get consent from families before talking to their children. So whilst there is truth to this, there is a flip side. If there is any reason to suggest that your child is at risk of significant harm, by significant harm it means that by us not coming to the attention of that child, there is likely to be danger to that child's either physically, mentally, emotionally, now and also into the future, we have to speak to that child. So what that means then is that we would then not need to seek permission to speak to your child. We would go out and speak to your child to assess the risk that has been highlighted either by the school or by any adults or professional, and we would then speak to the parent about the concerns that have been raised and advised on the next course of action. If it is a case that the child's safety is at risk, if they return home, we need to then be working with the family to see how we can stabilize things and ensure that child's safety, either through engaging with family members that can help to keep the child safe, or neighbors or professionals that are close by to the family. So yeah, this is the only time the duty of care trumps the right to consent. A fourth one, I believe, is social workers refuse to help me when I needed them. A lot of the time when we get this is maybe families want us to label their children a certain disability, and we are saying we don't believe that that is quite accurate, because maybe one, the doctors or medical professionals have completed the assessment and they don't believe that that is the case, and also our assessment of disability, which follows set criteria, have been undertaken and it turns out that that's not the case. We then have to say no to that level of support that is being requested at that time. But what we do not do is completely turn families away. What we do is try and identify alternative support that can help to ensure that all of their needs are being met. Unfortunately, it might be a case of the financial benefits that comes with that label is not attached to that, which we can appreciate is very, very difficult. But where there are no resources to actually account for that, it's not something that we can provide. Another thing as well is where families would get in touch to say they're having difficulties with their children in terms of behaviors, and the expectation is that now that a social worker is involved, they're just going to click their finger and everything should be fine. It's unfortunate because families get a shock of their life when we actually say the work needs to be done by the both of us. So we can provide tools and strategies, but ultimately our duty is about empowering families to implement these strategies. What we find sometimes is you would implement the strategy for 1 or 2 days, you'd say that didn't work, they've not really helped me. What they fail to realize during these times is that the behavior that you're trying to change has been a behavior from a very young age for this child. You're trying to undo years of ingrained behavior. That's not going to change overnight. What you need to do is give it time for the child to get used to the fact that likely to be changes coming. You have to buy into that change and then feed down that change. So it's that trickle down effect, because if you don't believe in the change that you're trying to implement, there is no way on God's green earth that the child is going to buy into that idea. One I believe is actually quite interesting is social workers are out to take children for no reason and they get paid for this. This is not true. I can't stress that enough, because firstly, this goes against the ethics and morals of social workers. The practice and profession itself, this completely goes against everything that social workers believes in. Our duty and role in society is about advocating for families, is about advocating for children, about advocating for change and empowering families to be able to make those changes without the aid of social workers moving forward. What happens is that when we are gone, what we like to see, which is what we say to family all the time, is by the time we end our involvement and you find yourself in crisis again, the expectation is, rather than a referral come back to us, you are going out there to reach out for this support, also actively engage in that support. Which then means by the time it gets back to us, we're looking at this going, you're already doing that. We need to get in touch with them and see how things are going. So a social worker's number one priority is for every child to remain with their family. Secondly, a social worker cannot just turn up and take a child away from their family, no matter how much concern they've got. But what they can do, because they don't have the powers, is call the police to assist, because it is the police that have the legal authority to remove that child under police protection. And also, before a child is taken away from that family, the first question that is always asked is there a family member that this child can stay with? Because we understand the importance of family. The only time a child is placed in foster care is when the family are unable to identify someone who the social worker can then go out and assess and then make sure that they are able to prioritize the need of the child over that of the parents. A lot of the time, what we do get is families would say, oh, I'll take the child and I'll make sure that the safety plan you've put in place doesn't get breached. A lot of the time, the family members breach it because their loyalty is to the parents, and they struggle to really see the concerns that have been raised, because sometimes from no fault of their own, parents are not always honest with their family. We see this time and time again. What we always do when we do become involved in the lives of families is we've become involved because there have been some worries raised. We've got there and we've assessed and we believe that this is low level concern. We can work under a child in need plan, which is section 17 of the Children's Act, where a child is considered to be in need. If their support is not provided, they're likely to then deteriorate and further concerns then come out of this. What happens during this time is that we come out to families. They would ask us, because possibly they've heard from other friends and network or read on Facebook that when social workers come out, they're coming to take your children away. They would ask if we're going to take their children away. And because the duty we have to the family is to be transparent, we explain the process, which is, yes, we might be on a child in need right now, which is voluntary. You don't have to engage if you don't want to. But what I will say is, if a child in need plan is in place and there are concerns that your lack of engagement is likely to place that child at further risk of harm, it might then be considered that it's appropriate for a child protection plan to be in place, because there need to be changes that are made to prevent harm now and also in the future. The basis of a child protection plan is significant harm now and also in the future. A child protection plan is put in place. You have a chair that oversees this plan, unlike just a social worker, where in the case of in the child in need plan, the chair makes sure that every action in that plan is being adhered to by all of the professionals that have come and made that decision for that plan. To anybody not meeting their end of the deal has to answer to the chair. So it's not just families that have to answer to the chair, the professionals have to answer to the chair. In the case that a child protection plan doesn't work, you then have the public law outline, which is where the social workers, local authority, would encourage families to get a solicitor, because it is believed at this point that a solicitor might be able to drill down the concerns that we've got to you. Their role is to represent you with the public law outline, which is called PLO. What we're looking at is going through the concerns that we've already been raising maybe for the last year and reminding you that this is serious and we don't think that you're making the changes and things are getting worse for your child. And it is hoped that by the end of this public law outline, the changes are made. We've been able to come out of this phase and gone back down to either a child in need plan or potentially ended our involvement, and you gone on your jolly way with your family with all the resources that are available to you. These plans and routines, we find when we try and explain it from the very beginning, how it works from child in need to PLO and then ultimately to the court proceedings, we find when we say that families are selective in the areas that they pick, and they say, oh, you're going to take my child away, when that's not what we're saying. What we're actually saying is explaining the process of how it takes us to that position. A social worker cannot take a child away without the sealing of the court, and also by the time we get to court, there is a child social worker, which means the child ends up with two social workers. So you've got the guardian who works in the court to make sure that the local authority are keeping within the rules and within the best interest of that child. Their role is to challenge everything the local authority social worker is doing. To represent the parents, their role is for the child. And a lot of the time, the judge listens to the guardian a lot more than they listen to the local authority social worker, which is why the local authority social worker has to have good enough evidence for whatever plan that they're trying to put in place. I'm not saying any of this to scare anyone. All I am saying is, from the minute we walk through to your door, you've got a right to say you can come in or you can go. Either one you choose, we have to respect that. And the actions that we're taking after that would be explained to you, and it would reflect whatever concerns that we've got. got. We can't badge our way into families' home. We are not the police. We have got no powers to do that. We can't force ourselves to stay. We're not the police. If you ask us to leave, we will leave your home. We have got to respect you. And in the instances where we do decide to put a plan in place, what we try and do when we do that is we assess the needs, we identify valuable resources and services around. For example, if there are concerns around alcohol misuse or drug misuse or domestic violence within the home, what we're trying to do is draw awareness to the family around those areas and how they can improve that and how that impacts on the child and who within the family can ensure that that child is protected from that, which is why instances like family network meeting gets called up. When we put together a family network meeting, what we're trying to do there is draw the attention of immediate and extended family to the concerns that we've got, where sometimes we would have extended family say, we never knew that there were concerns. A lot of the time they would have been aware because they've been invited to family network meetings and the concerns have been laid out bare to them, but because they're worried about their relationship with their daughters or sons, they feel they need to side with them. Hence the reason where things can sometimes become very difficult for children, and before social workers are aware of what's going on, significant harm has been caused, and then a social worker is having to then react to the situation. We do everything possible to ensure that the last result is removal of children. I hope this has been very helpful. Quite mindful that it's been longer than my other videos, but I thought it was useful to kind of explore some of this myth, and hopefully we can do more of this around difficult topics and hopefully engage in our conversations either through the comments section below, like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Until then, make sure you look after yourself and you stay safe. Bye for now.